Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today in our InfoSec seminar organized by the Information Systems, Security and Assurance Management Department in Mahalshan School of Management. We begin our December InfoSec seminar by acknowledging that also this seminar is being held virtually. Concordia University of Edmonton is located on Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many indigenous peoples, including Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux peoples. We respect and acknowledge these. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Andreas Glusu, the Deputy Provost, who have joined us today for this great InfoSec seminar. Today, we are pleased to introduce our guest speaker, Shazeen Ahmed, to give us an interesting talk about privacy and cybersecurity, symbiotic relationship. Shazeen Ahmed is a dynamic and experienced privacy professional with a diverse background spanning public and private sectors. Her unique perspective at the intersection of privacy and cybersecurity stems from extensive expertise in privacy programs, data protection, risk management, and compliance. Passionate about cross-functional collaboration, she excels at working with diverse teams to support strategic organizational goals. Navigating the complex landscape of cyber threats and regulatory requirements, Shazeen employs a holistic and innovative approach that consistently delivers comprehensive solutions. She balances technological advancements with stringent data protection standards, ensuring robust and compliant outcomes. Her contributions have been recognized through multiple awards, highlighting her commitment to driving organizational success and innovation. Thanks, Shazeen, for being with us today and sharing your experience with our audience. Just two quick notes. During the presentation, microphones will be turned off to avoid interrupting the speaker. At the end, we will have 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and microphones will be turned back on. Please limit yourself to one question to give opportunity to other participants to ask. If we have enough time, please feel free to re-ask again. And at the end, I will share the registration and feedback form with you. So please ensure you provide your name, email address, and brief feedback so we can send your certificate of attendance. Thank you. So it's all yours now, Shazeen.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all for the final InfoSec series of the year. So as the lines between privacy and cybersecurity continue to blur, what are the essential insights that are required to really succeed in this rapidly evolving landscape? In nature, when we're talking about a symbiotic relationship, it really gives rise to very powerful partnerships where individual strengths are amplified and weaknesses are mitigated. Today, we're going to explore some of those concepts and see how it applies to the critical relationship between privacy and cybersecurity. By understanding how both of these disciplines inform and strengthen one another, we can really unlock more effective data protection strategies. So we've already had an introduction, so thank you for that. Let's take a look at the agenda for today's discussion. We'll start with an introduction to the concept of privacy and related fields, and then we'll go through some of the key frameworks and regulation. Next, we'll dive into the emerging challenges like children's privacy, deceptive design patterns, as well as emerging issues like AI and data rights. Finally, we'll wrap up with a discussion of holistic data protection, exploring the key elements of a comprehensive strategy that integrates privacy, security, and data governance. So one of my favorite things to do as a privacy professional is really learn about people's journeys to privacy. For me, for the most part, I find that there's three buckets: those that come from the legal background, those that come from the IT background, and then those like me that kind of discovered it by accident. So typically they're in an administrative role and they've just been assigned privacy responsibilities as an extension of their existing role. For me, this was after undergrad when I was considering what my next step was, and I was handling health information at that time. And as you guys might know, health information, probably along with financial information, has some of the strictest data privacy handling standards. So this is where I had to do this mandatory training, and I fell in love with the idea of using legislation to protect data. I took this training a little too seriously, this mandatory corporate training, and then I was reading the full Saskatchewan LaFoiPA Act, and then considering how I can learn all the different regulations and go on about doing this at a full-time capacity. So a little bit of a ramble, but this really shows what the learning journey looks like. I've always been a curious person, and having the right mindset in this field is to be very curious, as there's always so much to learn. There's so many advances and just interesting developments that happen all around us. So let's get to some of the good stuff here and establish a clearer foundation of our discussion by defining two fundamental topics that will frame our entire conversation. First, we have privacy. At its core, privacy is really concerned with the management of personal information, encompassing how it's collected, used, disclosed, and safely disposed of. Think of privacy as the what and the why of data handling. Why are we collecting this information, and what are we actually doing with it? On the other side, we have security. As you may know, security focuses on the classic CIA triad, so confidentiality, integrity, availability of data and systems. This really addresses the how of protection. How are we safeguarding this sensitive information? How are we maintaining its integrity and ensuring that it remains accessible to authorized users? Now, while these might seem like they're very straightforward definitions, the relationship between really creates a really fascinating dynamic in practice. A system can be secure but still violate privacy principles, or be privacy compliant but completely lack the proper security. So to give you an example, think about a house. In this analogy, security would look like locks on your doors, your security system, and cameras to safeguard and protect your home and belongings from unauthorized access. On the other hand, privacy is really about what happens inside the home. It's about proper control over your personal details of your life. For instance, deciding to close your curtains or blinds, or even within the home, having walls and doors in different rooms. So just to consider, imagine you have the most sophisticated security system imaginable. So it's complete with security cameras, reinforced doors, alarm systems, and motion sensors. However, if your curtains are wide open, anyone that's passing by can see everything that's happening inside, and you've completely compromised privacy here. This analogy really translates directly into the digital world and how we handle data. You might have top-tier cybersecurity measures protecting your systems, but if you're collecting more personal information than what's necessary, or using it for purposes other than what's necessary, you are compromising privacy, regardless of how well you're actually protecting the data. And in some cases, everything is an illusion. So, for example, this glass house, it may look nice, but it fails both at privacy and security, as it's completely transparent and has no doors or locks. So I'd say this represents the worst case scenario in data protection, where both privacy and security measures are missing. So what are we trying to keep private? What is personal information? So personal information, or PI, has specific definitions that vary based on the legislation that you're looking at. While each law has its own nuances, at its core, PI refers to data about an individual. It goes beyond typical details like your name, address, and phone number, but includes things like your educational history, personal opinions, and even things like your blood type. This definition on the screen is from PIPEDA, which is our private sector legislation in Canada. Let's take a look at our understanding of personal information and how privacy has evolved over time. So let's take a step back in time. In 1980, there was a really fascinating turning point in privacy law. Warren and Brandeis wrote what's probably the most influential review article ever published, called The Right to Privacy. What's really remarkable here is that these two basically predicted our current privacy challenges long before the internet, social media, and of course, AI. Their concerns were centered around the emerging technologies of their time, so specifically instant photographs and newspaper gossip columns, actually. It might seem quaint compared to smartphones and platforms that we have in today's world, but the underlying issues remain very, very similar. Their big contribution was framing privacy as the right to be left alone. They recognized that privacy far beyond the protection of physical spaces to include personal information and dignity. Many of these core principles are still relevant today. And we talk about data protection, consent, and the right to control personal information. We're really building on these foundations that were laid over 130 years ago. Let's review some pivotal milestones in the evolution of privacy, particularly relevant to our discussion today. A foundational moment occurred with the recognition of privacy as a fundamental human right in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1940. This was a key turning point in really acknowledging privacy as an essential to individual freedom. Privacy is also listed in the Canadian Charter of Freedoms and Rights as well. There was a significant turn in 1980 with the introduction of OECD guidelines on privacy protection, which were really groundbreaking as they marked the first internationally agreed upon privacy principles, which remain the foundation of modern privacy frameworks today. It included crucial aspects like collection limitation, data quality, purpose specification, use limitation, security safeguards, openness, individual participation, and accountability. Notice the inclusion of security safeguards as privacy principle. This is really vital because you cannot fundamentally have good privacy without good security. Effective data protection requires both elements to work seamlessly together. Okay, let's move on to the modern era where we have the introduction of the GDPR in 2016 with full compliance required by 2018. This not only reshaped privacy law in the EU, but it really resulted in something called the Brussels effect, where EU regulations, particularly those in privacy, have created a ripple effect globally. We saw and continue to see this influence in regulations worldwide, from US state laws like California's CCPA to federal legislation in countries like Brazil and India. Just earlier this year, the EU AI Act was also introduced and enforced. It's the first comprehensive global framework for responsible AI development. And this act really integrates both privacy and security elements. It mandates transparency and robust security measures in AI systems. The penalties for non-compliance are actually very substantial as well, reaching up to 7% of global turnover, really showcasing the EU's commitment to enforcing these standards and promoting accountability. This brings us to an important question. Why should organizations or businesses care about this? Well, first, there's the ethical obligation. Organizations have a responsibility to protect personal data entrusted to them, really going just beyond compliance. Second, we do have compliance. Laws and regulation across jurisdictions mandate privacy protection, and the penalties for non-compliance are becoming increasingly severe. We've seen this with GDPR fines and other regulatory actions. Then there's also reputational impact. Poor privacy practices can devastate an organization's reputation. A single privacy breach can lead to negative publicity, financial losses, and perhaps more importantly, loss of customer trust. And when we're talking about customers, customer demand for privacy is on the rise as well. There was a recent study done by IAPP that shows that 57% of global consumers believe that AI presents a threat to privacy, and only 12% of those people that were surveyed disagreed. This is a really clear message that privacy isn't just a compliance issue, it's also customer expectation. We can't ignore the privacy challenges of emerging technologies and what they bring. As organizations are quick to adopt AI, ML, and other advanced technologies, these innovations promise great benefits, but also introduce real privacy risks that need to be addressed proactively. And this brings us to an important question. How does privacy and security work together to address these challenges? Let's take a look at that relationship. So where they both intersect is with this concept of data protection. This intersection is fascinating because it shows us how these disciplines work together to create comprehensive protection. For organizations, though, data is also a double-edged sword. It could be used as an asset, which can be very powerful for competitive advantage, driving innovation, and informing better decision-making, but also as a liability where data can pose significant regulatory risks, reputational risks, and potential financial losses. This is why managing, organizing, and safeguarding data effectively is really crucial. Both privacy and security teams have shared goals here of protecting data, although from different angles, building and maintaining customer trust, and ensuring compliance with legislation. Both of these concepts, privacy and security, are deeply interconnected. Robust privacy measures like encryption enhance privacy, while privacy regulations drive these implementation of robust security practices. This relationship is obviously something that we'll discuss throughout this talk today. So let's explore the relationship then. When I say they're both a symbiotic relationship, what I'm actually referring to here is that they're mutualistic in the way that they both benefit and strengthen each other. Think of it how nitrogen-fixing bacteria and legume plants work together in nature. The bacteria produces nitrogen or nutrients for the plants, while the plant provides the bacteria with sugars, so food. Similarly, privacy and security have evolved into a reciprocal relationship where they both support and reinforce one another. For instance, robust privacy practices prevent data breaches, and effective privacy policies ensure data is utilized in a way that mitigates security risks. And this natural partnership fosters a really resilient ecosystem for data protection, which benefits individuals and organizations. Ultimately, though, neither privacy or security can truly thrive without the other. Let's take a broader look at how privacy is being handled globally. As of this year, around 137 countries actually have a national data privacy protection law covering about 80% of the global population. These are not just theoretical or aspirational laws, they're enforceable regulations with real consequences, including hefty penalties for non-compliance, such as we see with GDPR and Quebec's Law 25. The US has had very interesting movements as well. In the past 2 years, about 14 states have implemented their own comprehensive privacy laws. However, this really creates a patchwork system, and since there's no federal privacy law in place, it increases the complexity of the US privacy landscape. But overall, we see a global momentum for organizations to elevate their privacy practices no matter where they're based. Privacy has shifted from being a nice-to-have feature to becoming a business requirement, influencing everything from customer trust to compliance and risk management, meaning that organizations have to align with these evolving privacy standards to stay competitive and avoid penalties, making privacy a really key part of modern business operations. Let's take a look at our own privacy landscape in Canada. I won't spend too much detail here, but just some key information is that we have a multifaceted system with various types of laws that are varied by just a jurisdiction and sector. I do want to highlight Quebec's Law 25 as it's particularly new and quite interesting. It applies to all organizations, including nonprofits, that handle Quebec residents' data, regardless of where they're based. It requires privacy officer appointment and mandatory privacy impact assessments, and introduces new rights to Canada, like the right to be forgotten, which is something that the GDPR already has. Some of these privacy frameworks can be really useful here. So we have the AICPA's Privacy Management Framework, which was developed through a joint effort between the American and Canadian Institutes of Accountants. Originally, its principles were known as GAP, or Generally Accepted Privacy Principles, a name that's still widely used today. This framework embodies a universal truth in privacy. Security is inherently embedded as a very core principle. Notably, this isn't unique to the AICPA framework. Instead, it really reflects a consistent pattern across all major privacy frameworks, including newer regulations. We also have the NIST Privacy Framework, which was released in 2020. This framework is particularly relevant because it seamlessly integrates with cybersecurity concepts, and more specifically with the NIST cybersecurity framework, offering a unified approach to both privacy and security. With overlapping areas, it shares two of the same domains, making it easier for organizations that already have that cybersecurity framework in place to build on that foundation and also embed privacy practices. By leveraging existing cybersecurity structures, organizations can really streamline the process of integrating privacy into their operations. But what about when these two concepts collide and conflict one another? That's a really interesting challenge because separately, both of these concepts can exist, but with respect to data protection, they have to coexist. We've discussed the interconnectedness between both of them. But for an example, Twitter in 2022 faced FTC action over their MFA implementation. They were trying to enhance security, but they were collecting phone numbers and emails for MFA that they ended up using for advertising purposes. We have to take this balanced approach by taking inspiration and applying privacy principles such as purpose limitation, data minimization, transparency, and consent when designing security measures. Additionally, privacy impact assessments, or PIAs, are really essential when new technologies or processes are introduced because it allows us to assess and address any potential privacy risks before they become an issue, such as the Twitter MFA. So let's flip the script here and take a look at how security measures are essential for protecting privacy. Security, as we've already established, has always been a fundamental to privacy. Let's walk through some of the critical security components that are essential. So encryption is key in keeping data secure. Data access controls can limit who can view sensitive information, and endpoint security protects devices from unauthorized access. Additionally, incident response planning helps organizations quickly address breaches. Together, these security practices strengthen privacy by protecting data from threats. So here's a perfect real-world example. In 2022, LastPass, which is a password management system, despite having very strong privacy measures like encrypted vaults, it suffered a privacy breach because of weak endpoint security due to a compromised laptop. It really goes to show how privacy measures alone aren't enough without a robust security system backing them up. And this really brings us to an interesting development, the convergence of privacy and security frameworks. This integration enables organizations to manage both disciplines more efficiently. So let's consider the ISO 27701, which builds upon the ISO 27001 security standards to include privacy controls, creating a privacy information management system, or PIMS. It allows organizations to leverage the existing ISO 27001 certification. Similarly, NIST SP 853 Revision 5 combines security and privacy controls into one framework, building on the existing NIST security and risk frameworks. This convergence represents a shift towards a holistic data protection approach. By managing security and privacy controls through a centralized system, organizations can streamline operations and enhance overall data protection. And now let's just throw AI into the mix. We begin to see the emergence of even more interdisciplinary frameworks that bring privacy, security, and AI risk management together, like the NIST AI RFM. This framework incorporates privacy and security as core principles of trustworthy AI, alongside familiar concepts like transparency and fairness, showing us that as technology evolves, these disciplines continue to intertwine. This framework builds on 4 key functions of govern, map, measure, and manage. And note here that govern appears in the NIST privacy framework as well. Again, it's not just about governance. We see familiar privacy concepts like transparency, fairness, and accountability being applied to AI here. Recent statistics from a 2024 IAPP survey showed that 55% of privacy professionals now also have AI governance responsibilities. And even at the C-suite level, 69% of chief privacy officers have acquired this additional responsibility. That really tells us that the skills and principles aligned with current privacy best practices are becoming crucial for managing AI risks as well. So as we move into the new year, let's go through some of the 5 major trends that we saw reshaping privacy and data protection. So focus on children's privacy, concerns about deceptive design patterns, AI governance and regulation, enhanced data rights, and stricter enforcement. So at a global scale, we're witnessing significant enforcement actions and regulatory developments for children's privacy and just overall online safety. In Europe, major tech companies like Meta, TikTok, and X or Twitter have faced massive GDPR-related fines for mishandling children's data. The European Parliament is also really pushing for strong age verification methods, which opens up another complex issue in privacy. In the US, we saw regulatory evolution at both the federal and state levels. The anticipated COPPA 2.0 is aimed at modernizing the 1998 Act with bans on targeted advertisement and strong protection for teens under 16. California also introduced an age-appropriate design code, which requires high privacy settings by default for those that are under 18. And recently, just last week, Australia also announced one of the strictest approaches yet by banning social media for kids under 16. Regulators will require social media platforms to verify users' age, but no real guidance has been provided on how to actually implement this. Either this is going to cause a lot of innovations in the field of verification, age verification, or it's going to cause a lot of unintended privacy harms for kids in case they go and collect government IDs or take photographs for age verification purposes. For deceptive design patterns, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, or the OPC, participated in this global sweep of targeting deceptive design patterns in over 140 websites and applications across Canada. They focused on some main patterns, so complex and confusing language, technical language, or excessively long policies, interface interference, so visual prominence of less privacy-preserving choices, nagging, repeated prompts to change privacy settings, obstruction, the addition of unnecessary steps, and forced actions, which force users to disclose more PI than required to access the service. It had some really interesting results. The deceptive design practices that the sweepers encountered in 99% of the websites they reviewed really hindered users from making informed decisions about their personal information and often served the interests of the platform while compromising user privacy. So some examples from this study is this image from Lazy Boy's website. They pre-selected privacy invasive options by default and really shows the interface interference at work. LinkedIn really was great at showing us nagging in action by constantly pushing users to download their application. So the application technically can allow you to collect more data like GPS location and access your contacts more than the website could. And then the last one that I thought was really fascinating was this example from Burger King, where they require you to put more personal information to delete your account than what's required for you to create your account in the first place. So go figure. A really good example, though, was positive design patterns that can really enhance user privacy, such as the case with the Lego website. They created a dual approach to privacy communication. For parents, this looked like clear, plain language explanations of data collection and use. And for kids, they created an interactive experience with Captain Safety, teaching them about privacy concepts in a really fun way. So this really goes to show how privacy can be both user-friendly and effective without resorting to deceptive practices. If anything, this type of transparency and practice actually increases consumer trust. So we're seeing a significant expansion of individual privacy rights globally as well. So some key developments here are comprehensive rights like access, correction, deletion, the growing trend of the right to be deleted and opting out options. California CCPA notably also introduced some of these rights, and Quebec's Law 25 also introduced data portability in 2024. In the EU, data subject requests jumped 32% from 2022 to 2023, really showing people are actively practicing their privacy rights. And with these expanded rights come stricter enforcement. So a notable example of this is Meta's 2023 GDPR fine of 1.2 billion euro for data transfer violation. This record fine sends a clear message that regulators will not tolerate non-compliance. What's striking is that Meta and its companies like Facebook and Instagram account for 7 of the top 20 GDPR fines. Looking at the broader picture, Spain actually leads in the number of fines with almost 600 cases, and Ireland tops off the charts with a total of fines that amount to over 2.5 million euro. Here in Canada, we're also seeing significant OPC investigations, such as the CRA case, which involves 30,000 breaches since 2020, and then also this recent Ticketmaster investigation following a cybersecurity incident that impacted the personal information of millions worldwide, and of course, Canadians as well. This really serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the importance of proactive data protection measures. And lastly, let's take a look at the trend with AI and data protection. The AI regulatory landscape is very rapidly evolving. Let me highlight 3 of the key developments here. So it starts off with the EU AI Act, which was enforced in August of 2024, which is really setting a global standard with its risk-based approach. It's not just for EU companies. It affects anyone placing AI systems in the EU market. The OECD updated their AI principles in May of 2024, helping ensure trustworthy AI development globally. And in Canada, we're seeing movement at both the federal and the provincial level. The AI and Data Act, which is part of Bill C-27, is highly anticipated, but unfortunately a little stagnant. Ontario led the way in March of this year, requiring AI disclosure in hiring practices in a law that was enforced. And Canadian privacy regulators issued joint guidance on AI compliance in adherence with existing privacy laws. So let's really turn our attention to what that means exactly. How can we apply existing data protection laws as we wait for new regulations to emerge? While we're anticipating more comprehensive AI-specific laws, we can already take significant steps to enhance privacy protection using the existing frameworks. Let's take GDPR into consideration here. We can apply transparency. So GDPR Article 12 requires clear communication about data processing, while the AI Act goes further, requiring disclosures when you're interacting with an AI system, so chatbots, or even when you're seeing deepfakes. The principle of fairness carries over as well. Just as GDPR prohibits unfair data processing, in AI we must prevent algorithmic bias, and as it can lead to discriminatory decisions. And perhaps more importantly, explainability. GDPR's Article 14 requires meaningful information about automated decision, which includes AI-driven decision. This means that individuals must have access to clear explanation of how their data is being used and how decisions about them are made, particularly when these decisions have significant impacts like credit scoring, hiring, and even legal proceedings. In AI terms, means that that it must have the ability to understand and articulate how AI systems arrive at their conclusions or decisions. So, all in all, effective data protection is about integrating privacy and security principles seamlessly, not just ticking boxes. To achieve this, organizations must adopt a holistic approach that aligns privacy practices with robust security measures. Data protection isn't about choosing between privacy or security, it's about integrating both. The foundation starts with a comprehensive framework that includes data inventory and mapping, helping organizations understand where personal data resides. Data governance ensures proper management and controls, while privacy by design ensures privacy is incorporated from the start. Next, preventative measures are essential. With security controls, safeguarding data, and strong privacy policies guiding business practices. Defined roles and responsibilities also ensure accountability across the board, not just one team. In terms of proactive management, continuous training and awareness are essential for ensuring everyone in the organization is really equipped to handle personal data. Regular audits and assessments identify vulnerabilities, and staying informed about emerging threats helps adapt to new risks effectively and efficiently. However, collaboration really brings everything together. Cross-functional transparency ensures alignment across teams with shared accountability, making everyone responsible for data protection. Effective incident response planning allows swift action in case of breaches, ensuring minimal impact on privacy and security. So, how do we make this work in practice? Let's discuss some actionable items and best practices. So you should start with trying to break down any silos if they exist between security and privacy teams. So you can create regular joint meetings or workshops where privacy and security teams, as well as other relevant stakeholders, can collaborate on shared goals, such as incident response planning or risk assessment, which really fosters communication and prevents duplicated efforts, ensuring alignment. You can also implement a comprehensive risk management approach by having a unified risk management framework that includes both privacy risks like data misuse and security risks like access, which provides a single source of truth for understanding and risk mitigation across the organization. For ensuring continuous learning and adaptation, you can establish a rolling training schedule for all employees, focusing on evolving privacy regulation and security threats like phishing. This really keeps teams prepared for emerging challenges and instills a culture of vigilance. To help prioritize transparency and accountability, as an action item here, generate regular privacy and security reports detailing your practices, breach responses, and updates on compliance. Here, we can also assign clear roles and responsibilities, which builds trust with stakeholders and creates clarity. Leveraging the interdependencies and relationship of privacy and security, we can truly support a comprehensive and seamless approach to data protection. And that is all. So thank you all for your time and attention today. I really hope that this presentation has given you guys good insights of how privacy and security work together to create effective data protection. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and address any questions should we have any.
Thank you so much, Shazeen, for this interesting presentation. I see lots of people clapping their hands.
That's awesome.
Now we will open the microphone. So please go ahead. If you have any question, please raise your hand. Yes, please go ahead, Tolo.
Hi, Shazeen. Thank you so much for such a valuable presentation. So I wanted to ask questions about the standards and frameworks that you had mentioned. So you mentioned GDPR and setting clauses, right? Where they said you have to disclose if you're using AI and whatnot. Based on your research so far, your understanding so far, are there now fines or penalties for these new additions? So from a GDPR perspective, from an OPC perspective, from other regulations that we've seen, I know that they've started incorporating AI and started giving guidances, but are they already stipulating what the consequences would be if found in violation?
Yeah, so I know in the EU AI Act, they are introducing penalties up to 7% of global revenue, but I think there's still time to actually, so I think full compliance is the date that they put out is like 2030. So there's still some time to kind of adapt. And I don't know exactly when they're going to introduce penalties, but I know that that does exist in the EU AI Act. With respect to Canada, we're still really waiting for an AI comprehensive legislation to come out, and hopefully there are some penalties, because that really defers organizations from really misusing systems. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Any more questions before I take the next question? Just a quick reminder, please be sure to provide us with your name, email address, and feedback in the linked form. I will share it with you in the chat area, so we may send your certificate of attendance. More questions? Is there any more questions? Yes, Alex, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I had a quick question. Do you have any idea of how you expect Australia to enforce their new policy on social media? Because that's a very interesting one.
Yeah, that definitely is a very interesting one. And I think it's a little bit too early to actually say anything, because this was really just announced last week. I know that typically they're not going to, they're going to try to really minimize data collection, right? So we want to avoid things like submitting IDs, like government issued IDs, or taking photos for verification. But then it has to be more than just like a checkbox that you click in to say you're over 16. So it's a really, really delicate balance. And I think there's a lot of good conversation happening about how do you actually do this. Some ideas that I've seen floating around are like puzzles or intelligence testing. But again, that has a lot of different issues of its own. So the other issue is that they're actually not providing any guidance, and they're kind of just telling tech giants to figure it out on their own, which is a really interesting approach, I would say, because although it gives the tech companies a lot of flexibility, I don't know if they're really in the right position to be granted all this flexibility without any actual guidance or standards.
Great, thank you. Do we have any more questions? Last call. Do we have any more questions? Okay, great. So thank you so much again, Shazeen, for this interesting talk. So we, for the next InfoSec seminar, we are thrilled to kick off the new year with our online InfoSec seminar series on Wednesday, January 15. Join us as we welcome a distinguished guest speaker from the Canadian Cybersecurity Network, who will provide exclusive insights into the highly anticipated CCN 2025 State of Cybersecurity Report, scheduled for release in mid to late January. So don't miss this opportunity to stay ahead in the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity. We wish you all happy holidays and happy new year. See you in the next InfoSec seminar. Thank you.
I saw a hand go up there while you were talking, Aslam. I think Solomon had a question.
Okay.
Hello, Professor. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. My bad. So
Okay.
sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you so much again. See you in the next InfoSec seminar.